Epigenetic reprogramming is taking the same technology that makes babies young from our old cells and applying it to our own cells. So when a baby is born, it just comes from our own cells, which of course are adult. And what happens between day 7 and 9 after the embryo is fertilized, what's called the epigenetic marks are wiped clean off the DNA. These are the methyl groups, acetyl groups, and so on that are on the DNA and the histones that the DNA is wrapped around. They're wiped clean, and from that moment, the cell behaves as if it's young. So actually for the first few days after fertilization, the cell behaves old. It functionally is old, epigenetically is old, transcriptionally is old. But after that period, it's young, and it doesn't inherit the age-related diseases that the parent had. If the parent had Alzheimer's, right, the baby is not born with Alzheimer's. That same technology has been used to make individual cells young, which we can do in a petri dish. And now, most recently, we've been able to do it with parts of the body in both mice and now non-human primates. And so to literally rejuvenate organs within their bodies. And we're intending to start clinical trials in humans at the very beginning of 2026 using basically just three small proteins that wipe the epigenetic marks off the DNA. So it's an incredibly exciting time, and we look forward to being able to address a whole range of age-related diseases. So we're starting with optic neuropathies, partly because these are incredibly important diseases, and partly because it's a little bit technically more easy for us to address them. So you might say starting with curing blindness is, not starting that small. There's actually millions of people who are blind from glaucoma, and there are many people affected by a second disease we're also trying to address called NION, a non-arteritic anterior ischemic optic neuropathy. These cause profound problems for people. They start late, so they're not used to being blind. They can cause isolation, cause mental issues, obviously falls. Really profound health consequences of late onset blindness. If we can address that, it actually addresses an incredible unmet need, and there are more than 3 million people who are blind from glaucoma, so it's not a small need. There's also a technical challenge of we need to get these 3 small proteins into the cells. And that sounds like it should be simple, but it's harder than it sounds. We need what's called a vector, some sort of basically a delivery truck that gets the proteins into the cell. And that's easier in some cell types than others. And it turns out that what's called the retinal ganglion cells, basically the nerve cells of the eye, are one of the easier cells to deliver to. So that's where we're starting. But we've already disclosed a second program, which is in liver, which we think about fatty liver disease, liver cirrhosis. These again are incredibly severe diseases that affect a lot of people. So that's another area where we have the technical feasibility to deliver. And then we're working on a range of others that we haven't disclosed, but in other organs of the body as well. For the foreseeable future, we're focused on age-related diseases. Of course, if you add a number of those up, you're probably addressing aging itself and whole body rejuvenation. It's not really the regulator's fault to run a clinical trial to show age limitation, that we're slowing the rate of aging or extending lifespan. It takes a very long time. You would have to take decades to run that kind of trial. And I do believe regulators appropriately want you to prove what you claim. So if you are going to claim life extension or something like that, you should show the data. You should have run efficacy and safety trials to prove it. And so it's really a limitation of the time it would take to actually run that kind of study. That means in the near term, companies are going to focus on age-related diseases, which frankly has a tremendous burden in terms of health impact and is a good place to start, right? If we can help people with all these different diseases, it's actually a really powerful way to prove out the technology. This is a field that has suffered from a lot of claims that haven't been supported by fact. And I think the absolute most important thing is fact, what you might call science. So we actually have to have the right biology that we're going after, and then we have to prove it with clinical trials. And so I would prioritize absolutely making sure you've got the right part of aging biology that you're trying to address. I'm pretty sure partial epigenetic reprogramming is the right one, but of course I'm biased. And then of course you then want to show that in the appropriate amount of clinical trials. I'm incredibly optimistic. I think we can add decades and decades of life and health to people, and that has profound implications. There's obviously an incredible moral value just in life and health themselves, but in terms of what that can unleash, in terms of, imagine, a skilled painter who has another, 2 decades, or a surgeon who is able to deliver, 2 decades more of babies, or just more time with your family and friends. I mean, what that unleashes, I think, is really a next level of human potential. I'm really excited to be able to contribute to that, both in lifespan and health span. And we're hoping that the results of our first trials will be positive, and that that'll be the start of a long wave of innovation precisely on this. There's a great study done at the Veterans Affairs in the US where they looked at the 8 healthy habits that are associated with 24 years of longer life. I think there are words to live by. They're somewhat boring. You probably know all of them, and I'm be like your mother and tell you to do all the things you should do. But I am guessing you're curious to know what the list of 8 things are. It is the holy trinity of diet, exercise, and sleep. So on diet, eat mostly a plant-based diet. Don't eat too much. On exercise, you actually don't need to exercise that much to get some benefits. So if you're not exercising at all, start as little as 5 minutes a day of running or the equivalent can actually add a tremendous amount. But of course, more than that is better. So if you're already exercising, continue to do so. And then sleep. And then the next 3 are what I call the 3 thou shalt nots. Don't drink, don't smoke, don't do drugs. And then there's 2 around mental health, managing your social relationships and managing your stress. And if you put those 8 things together, you've actually done a lot of what you can do to help yourself. And most of those things are relatively inexpensive, accessible to everyone.